It's no secret that smartphone manufacturing is neither ethical nor sustainable. From the workers who mine the materials all the way through the supply chain, modern electronics manufacturing is rife with issues. But as a consumer, it can be hard to know what to do. I mean, it's not like there's a better alternative out there, is there? Well, actually, there might be, and it comes in the form of the Fairphone 3. The Fairphone 3 was released towards the end of 2019 and comes running Android 9.0. It uses the Qualcomm Snapdragon 632 processor and comes with 4GB of RAM. There's 64GB of onboard storage, which is expandable via micro SD card. There's a 3000 mAh battery and a 12MP rear-facing camera and an 8MP front-facing camera. In terms of connectivity, the phone comes with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5, NFC and dual SIM support. The 5.65-inch Full HD Plus screen is protected by Gorilla Glass 5, and the phone comes with a 3.5mm headphone jack and a USB-C charging port. It is priced at €450 and for the meantime is only available in the EU and UK. Most smartphones now come in a familiar, rectangular shaped package which roughly fits in the palm of your hand. The display dominates the front of the device and there's barely a bezel inside. And in this respect, the Fairphone 3 is no different. In fact, at first glance, the unassuming device kind of looks like any other mid-range Android phone, but it's once you look a little bit closer that the detail begins to emerge. The front of the Fairphone 3 is covered by the screen, except small segments at the top and the bottom of the device. On the bottom is where you'll see the Fairphone logo, and then up at the top is where you'll find the speaker and the front-facing camera. Now you'll also notice that the speaker is unusually prominent, and this is actually by design. The Fairphone 3 is designed to be repairable, so that you can get into the device, open it up yourself, and make repairs to components. In fact, the components are even available on Fairphone's own website for a reasonable price. So things like the speaker, the camera, and various other components are easily exchangeable. This is done to extend the shelf life of your smartphone, as quite often you'll find yourself upgrading because of a broken battery, or a useless camera, or a broken speaker. So Fairphone devices are actually built to last. They're designed with longevity in mind. And in fact, 4 years actually passed between the release of the Fairphone 2 and the Fairphone 3. So it's not like there's an annual upgrade cycle either. In keeping with this ethic, it's actually really simple to pop the back cover off the device and access the battery, which is removable. And it's also here that you'll find the dual SIM card support and the microSD port. If you turn the Fairphone 3 over, you'll find that the back of the device isn't coloured. In fact, it's sort of made of a translucent material, which allows you to see the electronic components underneath. The 12MP camera is located on the upper left, while just slightly underneath it but in the middle is the fingerprint reader. Now while the fingerprint reader is definitely a welcome addition to the Fairphone 3, its placement is slightly awkward. It's a bit too far up the back of the device, so that when you're holding it, you actually have to move your hand up in order to use the fingerprint reader. And as we previously mentioned, Fairphone hasn't removed the 3.5mm jack, which means that should you want to, you can still use wired headphones with the Fairphone 3. On the underside there's a single USB-C charging port, and on the left of the device you'll find the volume up, volume down and power buttons. The Fairphone 3, like the company's previous phones, runs Android, Google's smartphone operating system, and it actually comes equipped with Android 9.0, which was first released in 2018. Now although this may seem to date the device already, there used to be a time when operating system updates were more important than they are now. Most of the time feature releases are uncoupled from operating system updates, so you can still get new features without having to be on the latest operating system. This means that Android 9 actually supports the majority of apps, features and services that you've come to expect of smartphones, so you shouldn't be missing out too much. However, it's also important to consider that if the smartphone is designed to last 4 or 5 years, it could be 2024 or 2025 before you get an update, at which point Android 9 will be 7 years old. So it's worth keeping that in mind before you make any purchasing decisions. The company's previous phone, the Fairphone 2, actually supported 2 operating systems, Android and Fairphone OS. Now although we think of Android as Google's operating system, Google has a version of Android, but actually the software is open source so that anybody can make their own version. And that's what Fairphone have done with Fairphone OS. The reason Fairphone OS exists is because it is a de-Googled version of Android. However, at the time of Fairphone 3's release, Fairphone OS is not available for the device, and there's no specific timeline for when it will be either. Ethics and environmentalism are obviously important considerations here, but so too is performance. You wouldn't want to be lumbered with a subpar smartphone for the next 4 or 5 years. As you'd expect for a phone at this price point with these specifications, you're not going to be getting flagship level performance. But for most everyday tasks like checking your email, going on the internet, opening a web browser, watching videos on YouTube and Netflix, the phone performs just fine. You won't see any issues there. But if you want to take professional looking photos and videos, or you want to play the latest, most intense and high performance games, the Fairphone 3 probably isn't for you. The one place that the Fairphone 3 does disappoint slightly is in the camera. Now in theory, according to the specifications, it's got the same sensor as the Google Pixel 3a. However, it's actually Google's software that performs the magic on that device to make the photos look so good. The photos with the Fairphone 3 just really aren't anything that spectacular. They're fine, and they'll be perfectly fine to post on your favourite social network, for example, and send on WhatsApp and things, but they're not going to be winning any awards for quality either. Now all of that said, the point of the Fairphone 3 is not to create the highest performing smartphone. The ethics and environmental considerations are probably the most important thing here. However, you're not going to buy a bad phone. So the Fairphone 3 needs to be a respectable device in order for you to even consider purchasing it. And thankfully, it is. Given the specifications of this phone, I wasn't expecting that much from the 3000 mAh battery. However, it was surprisingly long lasting. I left the phone in standby mode, by which I mean I had it turned on, it was running a VPN and had apps running in the background, but I wasn't actively using it. And it lasted about 5 days. Once I was using it actively, throughout a day, it did last most of the day without needing a charge. Now it's important to note that the Fairphone 3 doesn't actually come with a charger in the box. Fairphone 3 has opted not to include one in the box because it cuts down on unnecessary electronic waste. And as you've already likely got one, it's not too big a concern either. And that said, most of us even carry around portable chargers with us. And if you did feel that this was possibly a deal breaker for you, then there's another alternative too. As you can take the back of the device off and replace the battery, you could always buy a spare battery to take around with you and swap them out as necessary. As we've already alluded to, there are ethical considerations to make when purchasing a smartphone. Take Apple for example. It's commonly perceived as one of the most principled of the large tech companies, and since 2010 they've been using a company called Foxconn to manufacture their smartphones. But there's been a series of well-publicised worker welfare issues in the Foxconn factories. Companies such as HTC, HMD, Samsung, Sony and Google all have had similar worker welfare issues. In fact, the consumer magazine Ethical Consumer has even rated them the worst rating for supply chain management. And in the same rankings, Fairphone were the only company to be awarded the best rating. And supply chain management isn't the only area where this occurs. In fact, it's common across nearly all elements of smartphone production. Now, in the EU alone, there are 211 million smartphones sold each year. And in a 2019 study, it was estimated that Europe's smartphone stock have an annual CO2 production of 14.12 million tonnes. 72% of that output was actually related to manufacturing, distribution, and disposal of these smartphones too. This tremendous impact is actually fueled by the tech industry, who market every single small improvement as a must-have new feature, worthy of an upgrade. The Fairphone is a reaction against that industry and an alternative for those who want a more ethical and sustainable smartphone. The phone is easily repairable, with the repair website iFixit even rating it a perfect award of 10 out of 10. There's even a screwdriver included in the box to make it easier for you. And if past iterations of the Fairphone are any example, the Fairphone 3 will likely be supported for many years to come too. That's not to say that this is a 100% ethical and sustainable smartphone. Given the complexity of modern manufacturing, it would be unrealistic to think that this phone would achieve all of those goals. However, some progress is better than no progress. Since 2013, the company has steadily improved their credentials and is making good inroads towards a more sustainable future. And where they come across roadblocks, the company doesn't simply give up either. So for example, they found that they weren't able to trace where the gold in their components was coming from. But instead of accepting this or giving up, what they started doing was buying fair trade gold and then selling it to exchanges to compensate. So it's kind of like carbon offsetting, but for gold. So then we come to the most important consideration, which is should you buy the Fairphone 3? Ultimately, the Fairphone 3 is a decent phone, but it's the company's ethical and sustainable credentials which make it a worthwhile investment. It's not an easy phone to compare against the competition either because of this. And I mean, it does run an older version of Android and lacks some of the specifications of most mid-range smartphones. However, it is easily the most repairable smartphone on the market today. Fairphone's commitment towards worker rights, improved supply chain management, and sustainability are some of the key reasons that you would want to buy this phone. The Fairphone 3 may not be the fanciest phone, but it doesn't actually need to be. This is a phone you'll be able to keep for years and even repair yourself. And as awareness grows about the impact that us humans are having on the planet, the best choice is obvious. It's the Fairphone 3. Thanks very much for watching this review. We do hope that you enjoyed it, and if you have any thoughts or questions about the Fairphone 3 or the Fairphone and ethics in smartphones generally, then let us know down in the comments. And be sure to subscribe to make use of for tech tutorials, reviews and giveaways. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.